Recently, I woke up to news that looks like it could be the start of one of the most unlikely beefs in the rock and metal world. One of my former employers, Journey, is basically accusing Avenged Sevenfold of sabotaging their recent set at Rock in Rio. Now, originally, we had talked about this on a stream that I did on Twitch, and I recorded it, and I was going to edit it and release it to YouTube. But after thinking about it for a while, I was like, this might be the perfect opportunity to actually sit down and discuss another part of how the live music industry works, considering the allegations that Journey has made against Avenged Sevenfold. Now, Rock in Rio is one of the biggest music festivals in the world, and it's been going on since 1985. And this year's edition, 2024, had 7 different nights over a 9-day span of live music. Now, the specific show we're talking about took place on September 15th, and there were a ton of bands over the course of the day, but on one of the main stages, they were 4 acts, 2 of them being Avenged Sevenfold and Journey, and another one in between them was actually Evanescence. Now, I know what you're all thinking, because I thought the same thing at first too. Journey, Evanescence, and Avenged Sevenfold, in that order, from opener to closer. Like, Journey opening for bands is not something you often see. They're one of the highest selling rock and roll bands of all times. They've sold over 100 million records. But a lot of these festivals do mixed genres and mixed crowds, and record sales don't determine placement at festivals. A lot of it has to do with market and what bands that the local people want to see in those lineups and the popularity at the time. But all of that aside, Journey went on and performed their show at Rock in Rio. And over the course of the next week, a lot of videos started surfacing online, and there were a lot of blogs talking about how bad specifically vocalist Arnel Pineda was. And it actually got so bad that Arnel went on his own personal Facebook to post about it. In this post, and there are some spelling errors, so I will read it how it's supposed to sound, he said, quote, "Once again, thank you so much everyone who came to @JourneyOfficial show since February this year. I appreciate you all so much. And not only that, every time that I'm on stage with the band, I feel this immense gratitude, humility, and honor. I am very aware of this." To which he then posted a link to a Facebook video of this. In his post, he continued by saying, "No one more than me in this world feels so devastated about this. It's really amazing how 1,000 right things you have done will be forgotten just because of this, and of all the places, it's in Rock in Rio. Mentally and emotionally, I've suffered already, and I'm still suffering, but I'll be okay. So here's the deal here now. I am offering you a chance, especially those who hated me and never liked me from the very beginning, to simply text go or stay right here. And if go reaches 1 million, I'm stepping out for good. Are you game, folks? Let's start. God bless all of you, and thank you once again to all of the fans and friends who believed in me since day one." Now, I genuinely feel bad for Arnel in this situation because, like I said in the beginning, they are one of my former employers. About 12 years ago, I toured with Journey doing merchandise, and I had the pleasure of meeting Arnel and the other band members and being on tour with the crew. And every encounter I had with Arnel, he was just the nicest, most humble guy. And let's be 100% honest here. No vocalist is 100% on all of the time throughout their entire career. Things happen, man. The voice is the most difficult instrument to control out of anything in music. Just think about all the times that you wake up with a scratchy throat or allergies or you're sick or something like that. Singers have to go on stage and perform no matter what. So of course they have off nights, and this can happen. And it clearly seems to me like this was an off night for Arnel. And like he said, it's kind of a bummer that you can do a ton of things right, but the one time you do something wrong, people go after you. And they did. And I can even sympathize with that just from doing YouTube stuff. I could get 1,000 comments of people saying nice things, and then the one moment that I get something really negative, I just dwell on that. I think that's how we're wired as humans, man, that getting that constant approval, and then you focus on the negative. So this is really unfortunate. And after that all went down, some of the band members stepped in his defense. Journey's drummer, Deen Castronovo, posted on his personal Facebook. I won't read the entire thing, but I'll have it on screen if you want to pause and check it out. But the very important thing here that he said is that, quote, "Arnel has risen to the challenge of Journey's catalog night after night, year after tiring year. He gives to you all and Journey the best that he can give you. Out of maybe a handful of shows in 17 years, Arnel has faced the facts. The voice is a biological instrument subject to weather, fatigue, virus, bacteria, jet lag, etc. Sometimes it does not, cannot, or will not cooperate when needed. So what's the point of hammering a human being over something they have no control over? And I agree with all of that. That's basically what I just said a couple minutes ago in this video. And again, Arnel has been with this band for 17 years now, man. He's put on thousands of great shows. I've seen them myself. It's not like the guy is a terrible singer. He just had an off night. But here's where it starts getting a little weird. Journey guitarist Neal Schon went to his personal Facebook to defend his singer Arnel, and he posted all this absolute garbage fabricated bullshit about AP. Does this look like nobody had a good time? I'm asking you. All fabricated, owned and bought blogs, bullshit. And he posted some clips of the audience at Rock in Rio, and it legitimately looks like they enjoyed the set and had a great time. But on his next post, he posted, "This clip is from Rio, even though we found out much later that we got extremely limited by Avenged Sevenfold. That means that hardly any sound can get out of the PA to the audience. It's a bullshit move. Check out the audience. They loved it. The rest of it's fabricated crap." Now that is a wild statement to make, and accusing another band and their production team at a festival of DB limiting your band, especially a band like Journey. That's a legacy band. Like, surely this isn't going to happen, right? When a follower asked if Journey's sound tech couldn't have resolved the problem, Neal responded, no. And another person in the comments explained that sound equipment can be locked up and password protected. And then when Neal was asked why Avenged Sevenfold had been the headliner rather than Journey, Neal simply responded, politics. To which, in my personal opinion, I don't think it was political at all. I think it's exactly what I said before. It's the market, and it's what the local people in that area want to see on a festival. But 2 out of the 3 posts from these band members are kind of weird to me. Everybody's but Deen's. Even Arnel's. And again, I feel bad for the guy having to deal with all the negativity, and I hope he can just brush this off eventually, but that's a really weird post to make, like in the style of a, get this to 1 million likes and I'll do this. Like, that's really bizarre, man. And with all of the typos and stuff going in on that post, and listen, I know English is not his first language. Trust me, I was there when he had a translator on the road. It seems like just a drunken, emotional post. Like, you know, he's been there for 17 years. People aren't holding on to the fact that he's not Steve Perry still. Like, it's just not really happening. So where he's coming from with that one, I don't get it. At first, I was wondering if maybe he just wants a reason to get out of the band, but no, if he wanted to leave, he would just leave. There doesn't need to be anything like that. So that's a weird post. And then Neal doing all this deflecting to Avenged Sevenfold and basically blaming their choices or them limiting them on their decibel limits. That's really bizarre too, because before we dive into what that actually entails, I would just like to bring up the fact that decibel limiting is for front of house audio, what the audience is hearing. That wouldn't affect the band at all that's using in-ear monitors or wedges on stage. The band is not hearing the front of house. That would not affect their performance. So I don't know why that was even brought up, but let's dive into what this really is. So a decibel reading, which is abbreviated as a lowercase d and an uppercase b, is a measurement unit, and it's used to express the intensity of a sound and basically representing how loud that sound actually is. The higher the number on the scale, the louder the sound is. And there's a lot of different weighting systems, and we could talk about this for a while, but the most commonly used weighting system is A weighting. So if you see dBA, that's the most common one, and that's usually what's used at concerts from front of house. Now, what Neal is talking about when he says dB limiting is basically saying that the headlining band of the show has put a limit on how loud the openers can be. And I will say, I have seen this quite a few times while I've been on tour, but never at festivals. It's usually when a band is headlining a tour. Let's say, for example, the band's front of house engineer usually mixes that band between 100 and 105 decibels A-weighted. They want that sound to sound huge. Well, they might tell the opener's front of house engineers, you cannot mix above 95 decibels A-weighted. So then when the headliner comes on, they're going to mix louder and it just sounds bigger overall. That has happened and does happen, but most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, that's on headlining shows, because at a festival, none of these bands are really in charge of what's going on. The festival is, and the audio and all of the staging and everything that's at this festival has been brought in by local production companies for the festival. The bands did not bring in their own production other than probably the front of house consoles that they're using to mix on. And on the topic of one of Neal's followers saying that sound systems can be locked up and password coded and stuff like that, that's a very vague statement because there's different ways things can happen. It is absolutely a standard and a regular occurrence that a front of house engineer will lock their own console with a password whenever their band isn't doing sound check or performing a show, or when they walk away or something like that. It's so nobody can change their settings. And all of these bands that played on that stage were probably using their own consoles. I don't know that for sure, but in my experience with bands of this caliber, they will definitely be using their own consoles. Maybe not the normal one that they would use in their home countries, but they rented one locally that only they are using. They're not sharing it with anybody else. But to lock an entire audio system, all of the amps and everything that go into that rig, that's not something Avenged Sevenfold's team could have done without going to the festival first. Avenged Sevenfold's audio system tech would have had to talk to somebody from the local production for the sound to get them to do that. And I can almost guarantee you that no local production company would have done that, because again, this is a festival where none of these bands are actually headlining their own show. Now, even though this whole situation with Journey blaming Avenged Sevenfold for the sound and stuff seems very far-fetched to me, and I would bet money that this did not happen, I still did my due diligence because I want to find answers to this kind of stuff. So I reached out to some front of house engineers that I know, and I also reached out to people that worked at this festival this day, and some people I know that work for some of these bands, and I tried to get some answers. Now, the first audio engineer that I talked to, they wished to remain anonymous for this. They were not at Rock in Rio, but they've toured a lot and they have a ton of experience. And I asked them, do you think a headlining band at a festival would dB limit a band, especially a band like Journey? They told me there's almost no chance that that would have happened because, again, they would have had to go to the local production, the local sound company, to try and get them to do that, to which they would probably have to go to the festival and get approval to do that. And there's just too much going on and it's not worth it. They also mentioned to me that they have been with bands that have opened for Avenged Sevenfold in the past in different places, and Avenged Sevenfold has never once put a decibel limit on opening bands while they were there, and even mentioned that Avenged Sevenfold's front of house engineer is one of the nicest guys he's ever encountered. For the next person, I actually reached out to somebody that was with another band that was there at Rock in Rio that day. And when I first brought this up to them, they actually had no idea what I was talking about. Until I sent them the links, they said that they wouldn't have known that anything even was wrong. They said they saw some of Journey's set from the side of the stage that day and said it sounded great and the band was great. And to their knowledge, there was no decibel limit placed on any other band on that stage that day. Now, the last person I talked to also was there that day on that stage. And even though they asked to remain anonymous, I will say they were directly involved in some capacity with this entire situation. And they told me that there was no decibel limit put on place on any of the bands that day, and that a lot of this just stemmed from what is a slightly poor performance and a slightly bad front of house mix from Journey's front of house engineer. They said that if they had to guess, that this front of house engineer for Journey is just throwing other people under the bus and they went to the band and told them that Avenged Sevenfold limited them, or Neal is just making an excuse just to pass the buck off to somebody else, or a mixture of both. Now, I will say that does happen, man. There are a lot of times in this industry where people just don't want to take the blame for something, and they'll try and make up a story and tell the band that they work for that it was something else. And then that band just kind of runs with that story, because a lot of these bands just show up and perform. They're not there loading in and doing all the production work and stuff like that, but they trust their crew. So if their crew comes to them and tells them something, they're going to believe them, and that's the story they're going to tell. So while I was not there and I can't specifically say what happened, after just looking at the situation from my experience and talking to a few people, that seems most likely about what's going on here. Maybe somebody from Journey's crew told the band something that stretched the truth or didn't really happen, and then Neal took to social media, kind of just spreading that story, thinking that that's what really happened. But again, I wasn't there, and I don't know for sure. I just wanted to bring you guys some information, and I'll let you guys make your mind up. But that's going to wrap this one up, man. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to follow along on Twitch when we talk about music industry news and stuff, you can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech. I'm also on a ton of different social media. @TankTheTech is my handle on just about everything. But until next time, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will see you very soon.